Hello and welcome. Now let's refresh ourselves with a cooling, refreshing dip into the Dharma. And I purposely emphasized selves there because we understand, we know one of the three characteristics of existence is anatta, usually translated as not self. I usually refer it to as out of our control, our being the self. So I said let's refresh ourselves, and I mean that because we have the use of conventional language. And in order to refer to each other, to correspond, to communicate, to live in society, we have to abide by certain conventions. That is normality. But it isn't aside from the spiritual practice as long as it's understood. So, I spoke recently about Vedana, feelings, when I was referring to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Time. Mindfulness is the key to this practice because it isn't that meditation is just when we're sitting formally like this, observing the breath. Although that is very nice. We have to develop the skill to do this by practicing samasati, which is followed in the Noble Eightfold Path by samasamadhi. Samasati, right mindfulness, samasamadhi, right meditation or concentration. By practicing mindfulness, sati, in all of our daily activities, we develop better skills to be able to concentrate, apply our conscious awareness to, with focus, a meditation object and keep it there, rather than our minds wandering into papancha, the Pali word for overthinking, wondering about the past, having concerns about the future, but by being here and now in the present moment, with just the observation of the meditation object, samasamadhi. Samasati is summed up, as I was speaking of, in the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So this is a refresher in the Dharma. We need to refresh our understanding of what we consider to be this self before we can really see clearly that we are not what we perceive to be this self, this physical body and this thinking brain. And with that understanding, we develop the knowledge of how rebirth comes about, taking away some of the mysteries attached to rebirth, which after all is by no means mysterious. After all, you have been born. This is rebirth. It is what you are experiencing here and now, in this lifetime. You don't have to wait to die or believe someone as to what happens after death to understand rebirth. If you can see clearly how it is you are reborn into this life and what you are, or more pertinently, what you are not. Because we're not these thinking brains, however intellectual we make them, or these physical bodies, however fit and healthy they are, or aged, sick and decrepit they become. It isn't that that is reborn in the future or has been reborn now. After all, you were born as a little baby, and that physical body has changed considerably until you become an old person. So Vedana, feelings, is one of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. I'm not a Pali scholar. I use Pali words sometimes, immediately followed by the English translation, because sometimes they are more useful to describe or understand what it is we're thinking about, what we're talking about. So in the English language, we really have just mind, and we do have brain, which is more the physical organ, but often associated closely with the idea of a mind being in there somewhere, looking out through these windows, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, but it's contained in the brain. But in the Pali language, we have 2 words, 3 words, 4 words, describing different aspects of this brain, this organ's activities, that are summed up in the English language as the mind. And they can get a little bit mixed up and confused. So in that sense, I often just use a Pali word. And in order to establish mindfulness in all of our daily activities, we can break it down into the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? It's just knowing what we're doing, being careful, fully observant of everything that's going on, as is described with and summarized in these 4 foundations of mindfulness. So mindfulness of the body, the physical body, what it's doing, how you're using it, where you're putting it. And then mindfulness of feelings. Now that word in Pali is Vedana. Vedana. Not to be confused with, as I often do, Vijnana, which is consciousness. I'll come back to that in a minute. But Vedana, which is feelings or sensations, are what this body is experiencing, this physical body is experiencing. So the first of the 4 foundations of mindfulness is the body. The second is feelings or sensations, so we'll say feelings. And then comes mind, the citta. Now this truly is just that, the citta, the mind, that which knows. I'll come back to that, because then we have the 4th, which is all phenomena, or the Dharma. So in the Pali language, kaya, body, Vedana, feelings, citta, mind, and Dharma, phenomena. These are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And as you can see, we are knowing with mindfulness, careful attention, awareness, when establishing these 4 foundations, what the body's doing, how it's feeling, the mind's observations of that, whether it's clear or distracted, perhaps distracted by desires not to be in the situation we're in. For instance, if you're feeling cold, you may have the desire to move to become warm, do something to become warm. This is distracting you. This is the mind being pulled away by its desire, the citta, away from what is actually going on. Coldness, feelings of coldness, just that. So anything distracting from just that is not mindfulness. It's judgment, it's comparison, it's projection, it's seeking elsewhere rather than being in the present moment. And phenomena is seeing all of the phenomena, the circumstances, as they arise, both physical feelings and mental emotions, which are interlinked and dependent, for what they are. Knowing the feeling of cold, knowing the phenomena of not liking the feeling of cold, is mindfulness. That is mindfulness of the citta, knowing its aversion, its distraction from that physical feeling. But when we come to look at these selves, after all, I said we need to refresh not only our knowledge, our memories, but give ourselves a thirst-quenching experience of refreshment in the Dharma by fully understanding what this self is, or what we think is a self. Sakkaya Ditthi, the abandonment of Sakkaya Ditthi is view, and Kaya, as I said earlier, is body, and Sakkaya is personality. So it's the view that this physical body and thinking brain is what we are. And the abandonment of Sakkaya Ditthi is one of the three criteria in the first stage of enlightenment, that is Sotapanna, stream entry, along with understanding of the Four Noble Truths, abandonment of doubt in that, and abandonment of rites and rituals for the wrong reasons. But Sakkaya Ditthi, abandonment of personality view, can often be the hardest to comprehend and a hindrance in the way towards that first stage of enlightenment. But when you see what this Sakkaya Ditthi is, this view, this personality view, is simply that we think we are what we are, this physical body and this thinking brain, then your view is clouded. It is wrong view. So we break it down into their aggregate components, the 5 aggregates, or khandhas, you might hear it mentioned in the Pali. The 5 khandhas are not inclusive of that word I mentioned earlier, citta. Okay? Citta, that is most easily translated as mind, but not the thinking brain, and the mind that contains emotions, but that which knows. Think of it maybe as an external observational point, a witness, but integral. The 5 khandhas are rupa, which is this physical body. Then Vedana comes along again. So as a result of this physical body, we have feelings or sensations, Vedana. And these come about as a result of sanya. Sanya being perception or sense contact. So we have windows to the external environment of seeing, eyes, hearing, ears, smelling, nose, tasting, tongue, touching our skin and surfaces. And then we have thinking about those things. But those first 4, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, 5 sensory perceptions are sanya, contact, if you like, contact between the self, as we perceive it to be, and the external environment. From there, we have thought. Thought being the 6th of those 5 senses. So, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and then thinking about all of those things. So the 6th. So it isn't contact, but it brings about all of those contacts, the information received, and creates mental ideas, from memories of the past, experiences of the same thing previously, imagination about the future, and this is sankhara in the mental sense, in the sense of mental formation, and as the fourth of the five aggregates. Sankhara is also translated as everything, because all conditioned things, from the cloth I'm sitting on to the whole universe, are subject to characteristics of existence, anicca, dukkha, anatta, therefore impermanent, unsatisfactory, not self or out of our control, but are being perceived by your point of view through contact with the external world, through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and then thinking about it, creating those images, those thoughts, those likes, those dislikes, opinions and judgments, desire or aversion for all that we experience. This is sankhara. Finally, what knows all of this? Aggregates means things broken down, but brought together, these five aggregates create what we refer to as, or think of ourselves as, the self, but then are able to clearly see as not what we really are. So vijnana, consciousness, is that mental, physical brain, intellectual thinking brain's capacity of bringing together all of these bodily feelings, perceptions, and mental formations, the four aggregates, into the fifth aggregate of awareness. We could label it, for this sake of this, intellectual awareness. Like your brain is a computer. And that can all be categorized under the headings of, so the five aggregates in their entirety can be categorized under the headings of nama, brain, or mind it is translated as, but I don't want to confuse it with chitta. And there's not much else to call chitta. So the thinking brain, nama, so that includes consciousness, perception, and mental formation, and rupa, nama rupa. Rupa, which includes the body and the feelings associated with the body. And then there are mental emotions. These all still come under nama and rupa. And in terms of the four foundations of mindfulness, the first of those four categories, kaya, body, followed by feelings, vedana, which is the sensations or the feelings resulting from us having that body, but then the citta, the mind, that is aware of that, aware of the Dharma, the phenomena. So we can simply look at our emotions of liking or disliking, of sadness or happiness, and we can know we're happy, we can know we're sad. But our awareness of that, this knowing of that emotion, the citta, is such that it isn't like, it's like a, whereas vijnana, consciousness is directly related within nama rupa, in the khandhas. It's like a flag in the wind. When the wind blows, it will flutter. Citta is seemingly like a flag in a on the moon or in space that never flutters. But even when brought into the atmosphere, it's unaffected by the wind. However, it is pulled towards, like a gravitational pull, like a magnet, towards the khandhas. And this is how the citta, that which remains in its purest of forms, how it is pulled into the khandhas, how we have been born into this form. Now that can be applied to whatever realm you have been reborn into. But those listening here are in the human realm. But you could be in the hell realms, animal realms, or heavenly realms, or godly abodes. It doesn't matter. For purposes of listening to the Dharma, we can only do that in our understanding, here and now, in this realm, as human beings. Which is why it's such a valuable opportunity to take this opportunity, this opportunity to immerse ourselves in the Dharma and its simplicity. Because what we're not is this physical body. Neither are we what this physical body is experiencing. These are just causes and conditions. These are just the experiences of causes and conditions, the results of those causes and conditions we have put in place by our previous actions of body, speech and mind. And we may be really enjoying our current situation, or we may be really disliking our current situation. But when we know it's as a result of the causes and conditions that we have put in place previously, we can look into the current and present moment here and now and determine to change those actions of body, speech and mind to make a better future for ourselves. So this is the point whereby we refresh these selves in the bodily sense, nama rupa selves, the 5 khandhas, by having established the 4 foundations of mindfulness, knowing its nama and rupa, experiencing the Dharma, or the body and the feelings experiencing phenomena, known by the witness, known by the citta. And when we attach, when we like something about nama and rupa, we have a desire to get more of it. That first contact, sanya, sense contact, if it's of a pleasing nature, we want more. And the more we have, the more we want. Because the pleasingness of it, the satisfaction value, the more we try to satiate, the more is required to get the same experience. Until saturation, when we look for some alternative form of gratification. This is the nature of addiction. And it's the cycle of rebirth in the present moment and in future lives. In this life, within this life, from circumstance to circumstance, right down to the next moment, the next mouthful of food. Well, I really like that, I must have some more. Until you really do not like it, because you've had too much. But then you substitute that for more, rather than separating desire, generated through sense contact, from the knowing, the citta, but allowing the citta to be pulled by gravitational attraction, if you like, by desires into this bodily form, into these 5 khandhas, these sensations from sense contact. And this becomes an ongoing cycle of rebirth. We call samsara, the cycle of existence. And similarly, through sense contact, when we don't like something, aversion builds in us a not liking, a dissatisfaction. But rather than pushing the chitta away, as you might think, from the khandhas, because it's something you don't like, it still is pulling the chitta back towards the cycle of rebirth into the khandhas through the function of judgment, of disliking, of aversion. So the first, desire for something and more of something, is greed. The first of the three main defilements, the kilesas. The second, aversion to something, not liking, is hatred. The second, yes, of those kilesas, defilements. Caused by what? Ignorance. Not a lack of intellectual knowledge, no, but not knowing how to apply it. Delusion, the third of the three kilesas, defilements. What we're trying to eradicate is greed, hatred and delusion in order that the chitta can break free from samsara, rebirth. And you might say, well, how can you just do that? Well, this can be not easily explained, but more easily experienced. And this is why we meditate. Because in meditation, in deeply absorbed states of meditation we call jhana, you are secluded from sankhara, mental formations, including the 5 hindrances of sensual desire, aversion, laziness, restlessness and worry, and doubt. And as you progress into absorbed meditation, also bodily feelings, physical feelings, and the formations of the thinking brain, into a state of just pure conscious awareness absorbed in the meditation object. At that point and moment, when that becomes so subtle, the chitta is detached from what you consider to be self. If there remains, however, greed, there remains hatred, there remains delusion. The first two, greed and hatred, mainly born out of ignorance, delusion. If any of that remains, you will come out of meditation, back into this form. As you will in rebirth, as you have been, being born into this life, here and now, experiencing it for what it is, brought back by your desires, your attachments to things, your aversions, and your attachments to the disliking. So we have preferences, so we may not like a particular food, and that preference not to have that food is there still as a preference. It's still a desire in its form, a desire not to have. So we have desire to have something we haven't got, or desire to not have something we have got. So whilst that remains, the chitta's pulled back. So we understand what this body and this thinking brain amalgamates to. The wrong view of a self. A view, a personality view, Sakkaya Ditthi, that is what is reborn. No, it is not that is reborn. It is the chitta separate from that, like the driver of a car. At the end of the car's life, it gets old, breaks down, steps out of the car into a new car, drives off into a new car. So whatever that previous car, wherever it's been, all of the journeys it's clocked up, the dents it's received, the damage, or the improvements that have been made to it, are gone. They return to the elements of just dust, earth, liquid, water, gas and fire. This is just the basic elements of all conditioned things. And through anicca, dukkha and anatta, we can see clearly how everything, through entropy, degrades to that, ultimately. But what doesn't is the citta. It isn't of the khandhas, so subject to sankhara, subject to sanya, so subject to sense contact, subject to mental formation, simply the witnessing of those sense contacts and mental formations, the experiencing of the body and the mind. In the same context, it does not experience time or space, and therefore cannot be described in relation to time or space. As in the question, is it eternal then? I thought all things were impermanent. It bears no relation to conditioned things. The Buddha said all conditioned things are impermanent, unsatisfactory and not self. Conditioned things. Nibbana, so as we dive into this cooling, refreshing Dharma, it is to cool ourselves of the fires of desire through understanding, not intellectual knowledge, but understanding. And that is gained through experience, through meditation, on a foundation of moral virtue. That's true wisdom. And that cooling is described in the word nibbana, which means to set aside and cool. Literally it meant to set the pot of milk from the stove aside and cool before you consume it. Just cooling, to nibbana. And nibbana is our ultimate goal. The citta's environment, state of where nothing remains in terms of greed, hatred and delusion, or attachment therefore to this physical form and mental formations that we have become accustomed to through countless rebirths into samsara. We can experience, without becoming fully enlightened and attaining to nibbana, a glimpse of such states if we practice, through this practice. And then you understand through experience that there is no self. The fragile, superficial nature of this physical body and thinking brain, how temporary it is. And you see clearly how you've come to be in this position you are now, both from the previous moment within this life or leading up to now, but also in previous lives, through the power of meditation, practicing, keeping moral virtue, keeping the precepts, and spending each day time you have available, that you might be watching TV or maybe listening to music or just doing something which is experiential through the khandhas, through the sense contact. It's pleasurable, it's enjoyable, it gives you wonderful Vedana, lovely sensations, lovely feelings. But that's all going, that's gone, that's temporary, it's impermanent, and it's ultimately unsatisfactory. And it's not yourself. But if you can allow the citta for a moment, which is not of this conditioned of this conditioned world, samsara, to experience nirvana, even for a finger snap like this, it cannot be unseen, unexperienced, and is far more gratifying, satisfying, pleasurable, which is the wrong word, because it relates to the khandhas, the nama rupa, the physical nature of our bodies and thinking brain. But we have to describe such things with the convention of language. So, nama, mind, covers all of these things. Rupa, body, covers all of these physical aspects of the five khandhas, within which vijnana, consciousness, is awareness, as opposed to unconsciousness, put it that way. Still part of the five khandhas, which can be conscious, so awake, or unconscious, under anesthetic or asleep, so not awake. That's vijnana, consciousness. Then there is Vedana resulting from sense contact, feelings and sensations. But separate from that, but included in the four foundations of mindfulness, is the citta. The citta, that witness, that observer, the mind that has no place, no location within this body. It's not in the head, behind the eyes, or in the chest. Where is it? It isn't of this conditioned environment we've become accustomed to. So there is no geographical placing of it, no putting it on the map. But it is linked and attached to this particular form. These heaps, khandhas means heaps. So aggregates is like piles of stones one might use in the building industry, sand or grit or gravel. But these heaps are the bodily form and the thinking brain, the citta is attached to, which is why we wrongly perceive it, us, as being that, as being ourselves. So this practice is where we refresh and immerse ourselves, but ultimately it is the citta that's being refreshed by the Dharma and breaking down the ties, we call fetters, ties, attachments to rebirth, samsara. Those desires, those likings, appreciations of the niceties of life, and the aversions, dislikings of the things that we don't like. Citta, vijnana, vedana, nama. Lots of words there, Pali words. In English we have mind for all of those words. And someone recently asked about psychology. Well, psychology, even modern psychology, I don't think it breaks down. It might anatomically, physically, break down the thinking brain into left and right, front and back parts, but the mind itself may be conscious and subconscious. We don't pay too much attention, if any at all in Buddhism, to the subconscious, unconscious mind. Because, oh, hello, where have you been? The cat's returned. Because it isn't something we can practice mindfulness of. As you see, in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, it doesn't mention subconscious mind, but you could perhaps, maybe, in the broader sense, say that, well, that is the citta. Is it the subconscious mind in modern psychology? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But in the use of these Pali words, it's divided far more clearly when you get used to using them. The citta is just that, the witness. Vedana is the feelings resulting from sense contact, brought about by sankhara, mental formations, yes. But it's vijnana that's awake and conscious of all of this going on within nama and rupa. So I hope this is, to some extent, something to contemplate and think about when you next experience something. When you next experience, I woke up this morning, I hadn't had a great deal of sleep because there were some funny noises going on. And we don't sleep a great deal, much more than 4 to 6 hours at the very most, monks. Anyway, so one of those mornings we say you get out of the wrong side of bed, or you, what's the other expression? I don't know, that's one, isn't it, we use in English anyway. It starts to go a little bit wrong in the morning, and then everything seems to go wrong. And it seemed that my pindapata, my arms round, I'm not by any means complaining here, because I have a very simple and blessed life, I really do. But it seemed very difficult this morning, probably just because the nama rupa, the physical body and the thinking brain, was tired. It needed more refreshment. So everything seemed more complicated just to get my meal this morning. And if it could go wrong, it went wrong, culminating in dropping a whole pot of rice and vegetables on the floor, which, well, some other little cats and things came along and finished that up, so it's okay. But it got me to thinking, oh, there's a Katina festival coming up that I have to go to. I don't have to go to, I've been invited to. And I thought it was a good idea to go to. And these busy, active festivities are not really my thing, not really what I came into becoming a monk, and solitude practice, not the reasoning behind it at all. And are really considered really for the lay people anyway. But I did say to myself this year, if I get invited to one, I will go, because I didn't last year, only to my own, back in India. And my teacher in India, when he used to see my face at these things, looking miserable and disapproving, expressing really my dissatisfaction physically through nama rupa, he would say to me, always remind me, nama rupa, dharma rakito. He used to call me dharma rakito, still does. I'm not sure why O instead of A, but dharma rakito, he says, nama rupa, just reminding me that it's just the body and the thinking brain that is present on this event and this occasion. And similarly, this morning I reminded myself, when everything was going wrong, I'd cut my foot the day before, on Pindapata, I'm so grateful for the offerings I receive, but sometimes when people give me hot drinks, we can't say no really to anything, but it's very difficult to carry hot drinks, as you can imagine, if you watch the videos of me on Pindapata. So I was offered some hot drinks, and somebody gave me a particularly huge amount of food at the beginning, so my bowl was already full to overflowing. And anyway, nothing seriously bad to complain about. But I was thinking, all of this is just nama rupa. And the problem isn't, there is no problem. There's never a problem with people's abundance of generosity, is there? And I don't have a problem with being eternally, ultimately grateful for all of that generosity. But this nama rupa will go into aversion and attachment to how it was or how it should be, to rites and rituals, to routines. And it's that we identify, that we see, and can clearly see how our citta is pulled back, even through aversions, through things we don't like, into this life, this khandha state, these heaps. And that's all they are, is heaps. So when I sat down before I ate, I thought, before you feed this heap with more food for the physical body, just for a moment, as well as thinking and contemplating with gratitude, receiving this food that makes up this physical body and keeps it going for another 24 hours, also see clearly that that is not what we are. That is not a self. That is just the food in the bowl going into this body. What qualities the citta holds on to, picks up, that are liberating and not tying to samsara, are those of metta, loving kindness, of karuna, compassion, of joy, mudita, and of equanimity, upekkha. Those qualities continue with the citta, along with the kilesas, until the kilesas are fully removed. And it's balancing and understanding and knowing. And this refreshment comes from that, just reminding ourselves always it comes back to mindfulness, samasati. The 4 foundations of mindfulness really put it into perspective. Even if we don't think of all of the 5 khandhas or the 12 links of dependent origination, all of these lists all really just expand upon the 4 noble truths. Suffering and the cause of suffering. And it's that cause we're looking to cool, to extinguish, to free the citta. This is liberation, this is freedom. Freedom through renunciation as opposed to acquisition. It was that encouraged me to investigate monastic life. It was that, and for that reason I became a monk, realizing that contentment, satisfaction comes only through renunciation, not through acquisition. So on that note, I hope there's something useful there you can use. If not, just let it go. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.